All right, good morning, everybody. I have a couple of announcements today, and the most important announcement today is going to be a little bit of a non-traditional service. Our church is so traditional. We know that's going to be a real break in the theme for everyone. But one of the things we wanted to do this week is to give us a chance. We figured with it being this close to the holiday, it's going to be a lower crowd anyways. We're going to keep the kids in. Kids, you hear that? You're staying in. It's exciting. We're going to go over the Christmas story and then give everyone a chance to share their Christmas memories. So if this works better, and one of the reasons I'm saying it now, you can kind of prep yourself and start thinking of Christmas memories right out the gate. So when the time comes to share, it's not just a bunch of children saying nonsense. But we have some good stuff as well, which I love the kids, and I know the grandparents are going to be mad at me, but let's be honest. Most of what they say, absolute nonsense. So if we could get some adults that also had some stories ready, that would be great. Other announcements. The Pathfinder program, we're off for the next 2 weeks because of Christmas and New Year's. So we won't be meeting this Wednesday or next Wednesday. We'll jump back into it the third Wednesday from today. And we have normal service next week. So it's a normal Sunday service and it will be a communion service. So that'll be another chance also kind of as a church to fellowship as a family and look forward to the new year that's coming. We're not doing a Christmas Eve service, so we leave today. You're free till next Sunday, but we expect you guys to have a great week while you're at it. With that, I'm going to hand it to the worship team.
Are we doing things on the wall?
Yes. Yeah. I'll start it up.
All right, some helpers for an old favorite, Silent Night. You guys will stand up. We'll start off our Christmas worship.
Around to get you 1 point.
follow the star to a place unexpected? Would you believe after all we projected, a child in a manger? Though weak and small, the weakest of all, unlikeliest hero, wrapped in his mother's shawl, just a child. Is this who we've waited for? 'Cause how many kings stepped down from their thrones? How many lords have abandoned their homes? How many graves have become the least for me? And how many gods have poured out their hearts to romance a world that has torn all apart? How many fathers gave up their sons for me? Bringing hard gifts for the newborn Savior, all that we have, whether costly or meek, because we believe. Gold for his honor and frankincense for his pleasure, and myrrh for the cross he'll suffer. Do you believe? Is this what we've waited for? 'Cause how many kings stepped down from their thrones? How many lords have abandoned their homes? How many graves have become the least for me? And how many gods have poured out their hearts to romance a world that is torn all apart? How many fathers gave up their sons for me? Only one did that for me. All for me. All for you. How many kings stepped down from their thrones? How many lords have abandoned their homes? How many graves have become the least for me? And how many gods have poured out their hearts to romance a world that is torn all apart? How many fathers gave up their sons for me? Only one did that for me. He came upon a midnight clear, that glorious song of old, from angels bending near the earth to touch their harps of gold. Peace on the earth, goodwill to men, from heaven's all gracious King. The world in solemn stillness lay to hear the angels sing. Still through the cloven skies they come, with peaceful wings unfurled, and still their heavenly music floats o'er all the angels play, and the whole world send back the song which now the angels sing.
Sorry about the impromptu solo, but you guys sounded great. You can be seated. Frank's gonna come up now. Frank.
Huh?
You're up.
I'm up. We didn't have an offering.
Oh, we did. We have one or something.
Hey, this is a Christmas service. We didn't know it all.
Okay, I would like today, for everybody to take a breath, kind of relax. We're not gonna do a formal churchy day. We're gonna do a Christmas Eve day. And so just take, it doesn't matter, you can spread out a little bit and just kind of relax. I want to take, before we get into this, I want to take a minute and share just between us, Christmas memories. If you have a Christmas memory that stands out in your life, and listen, I know it's hard for you to speak in front of people, some of you, but I want you to do this. I want you to feel free. You don't have to come up here. You can just, you don't even have to stand up. I wish you would. I prefer you to stand up, but if you won't, but you're gonna have to use both lungs. Speak out a little bit. But if you have a Christmas memory that you would be willing to share, and this is open to anybody. I mean, the children can do this morning. And also, all the children, no cussing when you give testimonies in church. That's the only rule. But what I would like for us to think about is, also, maybe this year, God did something in your life, an answer to prayer or something that you'd like to share. I mean, it's just to thank the Lord. It's a praise service more than anything else. It's a Christmas service. And then when it gets through that, what I'm going to do today is just do the Christmas story. But I want to do it in a perspective of what they went through rather than what we see. Every one of us have Christmas every year and have since we were babies. And we grew up into the Christmas story. But the very first Christmas year, God hadn't spoke to Israel in 400 years. And this was a country that was God's people, that if you were to ask the average dude and lady, they would say their God has abandoned them. Now that's so far from the truth. But have you ever as a Christian felt almost abandoned by God? And we can't say that in church. You never admit stuff that's not religious in church. But have you ever come to a place inside where you didn't feel like God was close, and it's been a while since you heard from Him, and you almost feel like, I know I believe in the Lord, but I don't have that. Well, that's where the whole nation of Israel was when the Christmas story happened. And we're going to go from there. It won't be long. And kids, listen, I've got 2 or 3 questions we're going to ask while I give the story. So adults can answer them too, but you kids can give it a shot. But anyhow, before we do, let's start with a Christmas memory. And if someone has one, just remember to speak up a little bit. And those of you on viewing from online, you won't be able to hear the testimonies as well, but listen the best you can. And we invite you to stay with us through the rest of this, just so that we can kind of be Christmassy. But who would go first? Who would brave the ice and go first? And I don't mind pauses. I don't mind if he gets quiet. I can say, the only thing I'm really dealing with today is I've got these stupid shoes on, and my toes feel like they're entrapped. I feel like I'm in jail. My feet are in jail because I'm not wearing my sandals. But that's okay. I can't see your hand if somebody's hand is up. Okay, Miss Nancy, thank you.
This is probably 27 or 28 years ago. We had our Sunday school class. Barry wanted to have a bonfire down at the farm, you know, away from the road, out in the field, and we did it on Christmas Eve, and that was a Christmas Eve. There was a full moon, and so it was us and our kids and about 3 or 4 other couples that showed up. And Barry had this big bonfire going, and we sang Christmas carols, and it was just neat, and our kids really remember that, and that was a special Christmas.
I thought you was gonna tell something like Barry burned the barn down.
Now, let's find out away from his barn, that's what we're gonna have.
That's the stuff we're talking about. Anybody else, please? Selena?
I have two that are kind of the same. I've always, known how grateful I am for the parents that I have. But one Christmas, my sister Regina had been wanting a dog, and my mom just had more than she could say grace over, and there was like no dog happening, can't have a dog, can't have a dog. But my dad knew that my sister like really needed a dog, and it was like, I know that God just used his wisdom to answer that prayer, because it was made a big difference, because when Regina walked outside to see the dog, which was like the big surprise after everything else that morning, she literally said, she looked at me and said, so Jesus does hear me.
Oh.
And it was just the most precious thing to me, because as parents, you don't always think about how important those things are. You're just doing what you think is good for your kid, but yeah, I don't know that we really know how often we're actually answering prayers when we're just doing what we think is best for them. And then the first Christmas after my mom was gone from the earth, I prayed that God would do something special for my family, because my mom just loved Christmas so much. And we were at my aunt's house, and it started to snow, and like in all my life, it had never snowed on Christmas. And everyone was like, look outside, it's snowing. And again, no one knew my prayer, but I knew God did that for me.
I love that thought, because that's kind of where I want us to go today in our Christmassy thing. I don't want us to think Christmas and all that. I want us to think about where the people were at the time when God showed up with Christmas. See, that's perfect, because, to us, a child's wishes are important, right? But it's not on the level of life things, right? But to God, they are. There's no person. A 3-year-old's wishes for Christmas is just as important as a 60s, however old I am's wishes. Anybody else, please?
Well, we got Justin on Christmas Day, so that's a pretty good memory.
That's awesome.
Donald, you saying, yeah?
Yeah, I go. I remember years ago, back when we were living in local Snowville, and we had that big house. We had all of the family come together for one Christmas, and that was like all of our family plus all the extended family, and that was when Grandma and Grandpa were both living with us. And I think for almost 2 weeks we had other people in the house, and for a chunk of that 2 weeks it was like 26 people in the house. And all of the boys and most of the uncles slept downstairs in our game room. And I was actually, like, 2 of the kids were sleeping on the pool table, and I was sleeping under the pool table. And it was, but I think through the course of that Christmas, we broke 3 ceiling fans and 1 couch.
Yeah.
And there was a lot of great memories that were made.
28 people, 2 weeks.
Only one couch got broken.
The other couch was already broken.
Okay.
So we couldn't break it again.
We always judge how successful our frivolities was by how much furniture was damaged and the cuts in the walls and the sheetrock in our house while the kids were playing. We've got time, guys. We're no hurry.
It was a few days after Christmas, but last year, just the overwhelming joy of being able for the first time to have so many family members on the line.
Isn't that cool? I mean, honestly, and not to take away from your story, because that's what Christmas is, and that's what this is today. I mean, visitor, member, whatever, we're family, and this is all about that. I mean, that's so good.
Right. This is kind of going on the net, but
Speak up this little
this
bit.
kind of going on what the net had to say, but, I think it was 2 or 3 Christmases ago, so I guess Justin must have been full in mind after this whole thing. He says, what's your favorite Christmas memory? Okay, I said, well, Justin, I got to think about that. He came back to me 2 or 3 days, kept coming back each day for about 2 or 3 days, asking me what it was, and I kept stalling what was on him, trying to think. And then he said, isn't it me? So, Justin, just so you know, you're my favorite Christmas memory for the rest of my life.
That works. We had the boys, we had a big tree, and this is when our house, as they call it. No, at Pop's Talk, but we had, the boys were still young. And I had told them that for Christmas, I was gonna get them silky panties that were camouflage. And that's what they were gonna get for Christmas, and they were, it was so funny, because we had told them, you can't complain, right? You tell a kid, you can't complain when you get a gift, you're thankful. So I wrapped, like, I don't know which one of y'all it was, but I wrapped 4 sets of camouflage underwear and different gifts, and we would let them open, we did our gifts on Christmas Eve. And that year I let them open the gifts, but I made sure that the first 4 gifts, and I wanna say it was John Bradley, but it was, the first time they opened up, it was all silky panty underwear, and they were all like laughing, because they knew I was playing a trick on them, right? Second time, they're not laughing quite as much. They opened the third, and it's underwear and panties again, and one of them just started crying. Like Christmas memory. Yeah. Anybody else?
For Christmas as kids, we would always go to my grandparents' house in Valdosta. And you know, they had so much land, so our parents would just be like, go outside and don't come back until we call you. And that was always a really good memory. And it's kind of, you know, we'd be there with all of our cousins, just making a huge mess. And it's kind of fun to see Caleb and Valor, Justin Westlaw, and Lily, they're all kind of, you know, when they get together, that's what, during our Christmas holidays, that's what they're all doing, is they're going off and just having adventures together, and it's kind of, it's fun to see as they get older. So I guess we're making those Christmas memories.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I'm just looking at something. Thank you.
Okay. So growing up, it seemed like every year, you and Mom would be like, okay, you need to curb your expectations because we don't have a lot of money. We never have a lot of money in ministry. And every year, it was like, you know, this kind of goes along with the school and everything. We just had a ton of presents coming all of a sudden. And we never really worried about it as kids. I mean, we weren't like, it wasn't all about the presents, but, you know, we were just like, oh, yeah, if we don't get presents, we don't. But every year, it seemed like growing up in Arizona and before that, North Carolina, you know, as a kid, I just remember, like, we might not get a lot of Christmas presents. And then we have so many presents. And God just provided every year. That's the memory I always have of God's provision, you know, that time of year.
There was many nights, 2 or 3 nights before Christmas Eve, when I'd be up, everybody else was sleeping. God, we gotta have presents for the kids, but it was neat. Anybody else? Christmas memories. Okay, Valor, go ahead, say it really loud.
Well, what I like is my mom.
Perfect Christmas memories.
Christmas memory.
Anybody else?
We like her too.
So many guys are sitting there saying, I wanna say something.
I want to say something, but I'm scared to say it, but here it goes.
That's right, Mike, go ahead, dude.
10 years ago, I got woke up by my oldest daughter, said, it's time to get up, time to open presents. I woke up, I've got all four of my kids there, and 14 grandchildren waiting on me. To me, I will never forget that.
Yeah,
When you look, you see 14 grandchildren all in the same room,
Yeah.
and the presents are from the living room to the kitchen.
Yeah.
absolutely.
I just sat down and started watching a video, and they said, where's granddaddy? I said, cover me up with all the paper.
Absolutely. Okay, Lily, you can do it, but you gotta do it loud. So speak loud, girl. Somebody's got to say that, repeat that for me.
But she likes to hear on her family and everyone at Christmas, and she's very thankful for her family and everyone.
Oh, that is so cool, Lily, thank you. Did I see a hand behind there? From the retard section?
This isn't really a Christmas memory, but I'm glad that we're blessed enough to have all these people back there at homes every year.
Absolutely, absolutely. That is, thankfulness is a Christmas
Yeah.
thing. Yeah, you're right. Okay, Caleb, say it loud, dude.
I'm glad that close on Christmas, well, close to it, we get to have the annual sleepover.
Perfect. Okay.
I would say about 2 or 3 Christmases ago, my first Christmas with Selena and her family. And one of my best memories is waking up early with Ella and getting everybody up and just going downstairs, seeing the presents and spending time together. Just all the life that was in the house, from cooking in the kitchen, from opening presents and just spending time together, having conversations, getting to see what they do for Christmas. I'd say that was my best memory yet.
Isn't that cool? Stuff like that, man. I mean, and you know, think about it, guys. Think about it. We don't always connect the dots, right? What other time in history or in humanity does the whole planet stop and take a week off to reflect? Whether a lot of people don't like to use the name Jesus or Christ anymore, but yet his birthday still stops them. And they still attend, and then when it's all said and done, we share Christmas memories, and it's thankfulness, family, and memories of just little things that matter. And it's just being with people we love. That's it. That's so awesome. Somebody else? Okay?
I remember when we traveled to Wisconsin for Christmas, and the kids hadn't seen a lot of snow. I don't know if they hadn't seen any snow really, but they were praying for that they'd get a lot of snow. And so while we were there, they actually had a blizzard, and all the cars covered up. You couldn't see where they were. It was kind of cool. So that was a cool memory. Walk into the parks, they had parks down the end of the street. It's just like a winter wonderland.
Frank, I know how the shepherds must feel, cause being one of 12 kids, and him being born on a dairy farm, we spent the Christmas day milking. That was one thing you had to do. You didn't do nothing else, you had to do it. So,
That's why your handshake's so strong, Barry.
it was an ordeal, but,
Yeah.
and then all the kids and wives and their kids, we'd have 35, 40 people for Christmas.
I just think, you know what, Christmas isn't the presents. You can have a Christmas memory around the present, but Christmas is family, and just being together, and just sharing, and just, you know, we don't take time to say we love each other enough. But at Christmas, everybody does. That's what Christmas is about. Somebody else,
I got one.
please.
It was a long time ago, but I remember I requested this throughout the year. I was requesting Lego sets, and it was just one collection of sets I was working at every day. I was saving my money and buying them up, but there was this one that was really expensive, and I'm like, I had to have it because it was the last one in the collection. So I requested it, and my mom's like, no. I'm like, okay, great. that was the only thing I ever requested that year. I didn't want anything else. That was the one thing I wanted. And Christmas Day came, we opened up all our gifts, and it wasn't there. I'm like, all right, expect it. All right, she told me no, I got it. Well, throughout that entire year, me and my dad would shoot pool together, get on a pool table. And Dad's like, hey son, why don't you go rack up, go rack. I'm like, but I always rack. He's like, I know, but go rack. So we'll play in just a second. I'm like, all right, fine, whatever. So I run into the rack, and I knew the shape of the box of the set, and I saw it wrapped up right there in front of the pool table. I'm like, I was screaming, hollering. I picked it up, and I ran upstairs and started building that sucker. I was excited.
That's just so funny. It's so fun to think about those kind of. Anybody else? Okay.
I think, you know, when you talk about family and Christmas and everything, I think some of the happiest days of my childhood were at my grandmother's house, and all the aunts and uncles and cousins would all get together, and she had this big old huge southern house, and just the happiest times that we had there. Just like everything with Christmas was, as you talk about it, is being with people. So we had this tradition whereby all the cousins and aunts and uncles, everybody would draw a name out of the hat. And so I guess one year this aunt had my name, and she's a very dear saint of God, okay, and she gave me this Fuller hairbrush, which was selling Fuller hairbrushes at that time. Well, having moved to, all over the earth between.
Wait, she gave you a hairbrush. She gave you a hairbrush.
Yes. I had hair in those days.
This was a long time ago?
Long time ago, early 60s, there you go. So anyway, but it's like, that hairbrush, because of her, meant the world to me.
Exactly.
Do you know what I mean? And I've still got that hairbrush to this day, even though, we moved pillar to coast. I lived in Bermuda for 7 years, in Canada, and back in New Hampshire, and the West Coast and everything.
And it's missing 3/4.
It's missing 3/4 of the bristles, but I
But
still
you don't
got it.
notice that.
But it's still a memory of her, you know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, hey, listen, that's you know, it's funny because when you stop and think about it, in a group like this, and you start sharing memories, a memory is something special to us. That doesn't mean it's gonna be special to the person. But in reality, when you stop, take the time to listen, it is special. I mean, all of us have special. Most of us have some kind of special Christmas memories. It's just really neat.
It's not the gift, it's the person.
Exactly, and what they're given, the
That's right.
conveyance,
That's right.
the conveyance of heart.
That's right.
Exactly. Anybody else?
I feel like Esther has something she wants to say, and she just can't quite work up the
Yeah,
courage.
I
So
know that same thing. But
I'm
I
gonna
don't
encourage her a
wanna
little bit.
Yeah.
I mean, I have a lot that I'm thankful for and a lot of great memories. I think the fact even that our Aunt Elizabeth is here with us today is the proof that miracles still happen.
Absolutely.
Yeah, a lot of great memories.
You just don't want to share it.
I share.
I'm with you, I'm just kidding. I can't help it. Okay, let's change gears. I want to hear Sharon's, and let's change gear. After Sharon's one, I want anyone that will, we'll take a few minutes. And if you had something this year, an answer to prayer, something special this year, share that, because that's part of the thankfulness that we have. Sharon, go ahead, please.
I remember when we lived in North Carolina, my mom and dad came down to visit, and I'm all about like Christmas traditions. I thought, we need to get some more Christmas traditions. So why don't we start like, what if we make Christmas cookies for our neighbors and go caroling, you know? It was hilarious. Okay, so I made these cookies, they turned out horrible. It was like, well, it was some kind of, okay, I won't even go into it, but anyways, so I thought, well, oh well, you know, we'll do the Christmas caroling part. The whole family's here, let's just go to the doors and knock on the doors. Well, my dad is half deaf and he loves to sing. And he seemed to want to like just belt it out and carry it. I mean, once he started, there's like no returning. I mean, you couldn't even find your note anymore.
It makes God sound like a check.
Oh, wow.
Like, let someone else, I mean, you couldn't, and, it was very painful. It was quite hilarious.
The
But
people
these
we were
poor
singing
neighbors,
to
so much for this
were in
Christmas
pain.
tradition. We need to do it. Kind of funny.
Okay, Christmas memories or something maybe this year that God did, that, an answer to prayer or something this year that God did. I don't want to belabor it, but I want to get into the way we're going to do the Christmas story, because I'm kind of interested in seeing how this plays out, because I've been kind of encouraged this morning studying it. But go ahead. Anybody?
This is a memory and also something I'm thankful for, so two in one. But about 10 years ago, around this time, I was looking forward to getting married to Annette. 11 years ago. So obviously, trying to slow time down a little bit, but that I'm very thankful for her deciding to marry me, for everything that's happened after that. And Wesley and Justin and Lily and now, everything with the school, it just, so much has happened this year, but it all started, right before Christmas, I think 11 years ago.
Amen. I knew when I had my first lunch ever with Jim, that this was a marriage made in heaven.
The funny thing about it is, we were just talking about this last night in the car on the way back from our first lunch, yes.
It was like Donald Trump meets Larry the Cable Guy. He was doing it right. Anybody else? Yeah, because honestly, we've had a lot of answers to prayers. The thing that I've been amazed at this year, because economy and everything's kind of tight, and finances have been tight around the church this year, and it's all understandable. I believe God's the God of the money we don't have, as much as He is the God of the money we do have. I don't believe there's a time we go through a financial challenge that God's not the master of that. I just believe He's that involved in our life. I don't believe there's a coincidence. I don't believe it's anything other than God's hand on that. So I try to look at it different, and I just have seen this year, it's been crazy, because Charles, since God laid it on our hearts, God laid it on Charles and our hearts to start this church separately. We were in Cuba together, but God spoke to both of us separately, and then we wouldn't talk to each other, because neither one of us wanted to do it. But the history of this church has been over and over and over again, God has brought things to us in ministry that any church I've ever been, and I'm not saying this comparing churches, please don't misunderstand what I'm saying. But we would have never had the freedom, but God has brought needs to our church that just, and then He's answered the needs in ways we couldn't. But this year, a wave started right in the middle of the summer. People started having special needs, and I'm sitting here thinking, okay, we're going to pay insurance this month, and how are we going to pay this, and what are we going to do here? And then somebody needs this, and it's huge. I mean, it's not much, $3,000-4,000 isn't much unless you don't have 20. And so, I mean, it's just stuff that was happening. And all year long this year, God has used our group, our church, to help people that are not part of our church, but had needs that had Jesus's fingerprints on it. And I can say thank you to us as a church body, but I can also say that I'm so thankful that God allows us and has used us in that way, in the sense that I just remember, and this goes back a ways, but when we had the COVID and Heyman called, I got a phone call from India, and it was a panic call. It wasn't normal, and Heyman doesn't do this. I mean, I've known his family, Sharon, I've known his family before Sharon and I were married. His dad, and now him, and their ministry touches that whole area of India. And he called me, he said, Frank, I'm not asking for money. He said, I'm just telling you that we have people dying in our churches from starvation. And I've got friends that are pastors that have died. starvation, because in their area, the pastors are the least paid and the least. And he said, we're in desperate state, and in India, where he was, you had 2 hours a day you could leave your house to go to the market, but nobody could work. So nobody could go to the market to buy some stuff. He said, I'm just asking, is there any way we can get help? And I'm just asking for prayer. Because at the time, we were so poor, we couldn't pay attention. And it was just, we didn't have it. But we got together as a church and prayed. And we emptied out our savings and our church's bank and everything everybody gave in. And we sent them $18,000, which is not a lot of money for a church, but it was everything we had. It was blood. And I remember Hamath contacting us and said, man, we were able to feed our church, other churches, and one orphanage that was completely out of food. He said, there's people that are alive today because of that offering. And I'm not bragging on the offering. What I'm saying is God has brought time and time again, because it's like Christmas memories. It's a big one to the person that gets it. If you feed 20,000, that's huge. But if you feed one, to that person, it's huge. And what I'm saying is, God's, this year, with the struggles that we've had financially, time and time and time again, last time Charles was the one that kind of spanked my wimpy faith. We got a need. We were standing on the deck out here. It's been a month or so ago. We were standing on the deck and somebody gave us a need. It wasn't a member of our church, but there was a need that was a God, had God's fingerprint on it. And I was going to say no, we promised God when we started this church we would never say no, as long as God would show us how to say yes. And that's how we've always done. This time I just didn't have it. So Charles was standing there, so I shared the need with Charles. And he started laughing. He said, isn't this so cool? He didn't say, hey, that's me. I would say, Charles, isn't this cool that God does this every time when we can't afford it? It's going to be fun to watch. And I think that's where we are at Christmas. I think that's what Christmas was, and that's what I want to get into. Unless somebody else has something to say, you do say it, please, because I think that's as important as what I'm fixing to say. Anybody?
I was gonna say the one answer to prayer that, we've had a lot this year that stuck out, but one is, I've prayed and been praying a lot that one thing our church does well is work with the kids that God brings us, and that we can have a generation that passes on the faith. And we've seen a lot of answers to prayer around that this year, which, like almost every time we have one of these services, Selena has something to say that's happening at her school that is miraculous, and she's seen quite a bit in the last year. We've had, even in the kids that are here in this service, some really big moments this year. And then with the Pathfinder program, there's kids that aren't even a part of our church, families that aren't a part of our church, that our church is getting to minister to every week. And we've seen a really profound impact there. And then of course the school as well, that our church has been able to help in some small way, to do what we can to support a ministry God is doing. And again, we see a group of children that desperately need people to point them to Christ and show them how to be men and women of character. And it's happening. And so that to me is a huge answer. It's a series of answers to prayer, and each one is huge, but it's been a consistent theme this year, and that's exciting to me.
Okay, kids, look at me. Every one of you look at me. I need you to pay attention, because during this Christmas story, it's a little different than the one we're going to do Tuesday night. Or how we do houses, and Tuesday night I always do the Christmas story. I'm going to give some details, and I'm going to ask questions, and I want you to help answer. Okay? You hear me, Lily? Okay, girl. Here we go, guys. I want to set the stage, because I think we missed this. Okay, this is the Christmas story. Malachi had finished his prophecy. And basically, the children of Israel had started from Abraham, became a nation that was in bondage and slavery, was delivered all through the history of Israel. And then you get to the point where they're sent to Babylon for 70 years, because of their rebellion. God brings them miraculously back, gives them the revival, and they go through that revival, and afterwards, they, because of their own compromises and their own human stains and humanity and sin and all the stuff, it's hard to follow a holy God without a cross. I mean, you basically have to kill a goat every time you sin. And guys, y'all wouldn't relate to this, but to me, they don't have enough goats to cover me. And so I'd be slaughtering goats all the time. That's all I'd be doing. But yeah, so you go through this time, and then all of a sudden, it's almost like when you get to Malachi, the children of Israel are droning. They've got God's promises, they've got God's word, they've got the answer to the world, they've got a God that claims them as their own. And they're droning because they've had God's promises, and in their minds, God's promises hadn't brought their expectation to pass. And so they're thinking, God, why do we serve you and we give you everything and you give us so little? And that's how you describe Malachi. That's basically that. They're not hard-hearted, they're just disheartened. And they're disheartened in God. They love Him, they're God's people, but man, it's just hard to serve Him. Now, that's not possible, but we live in that mentality at times. But the whole nation of Israel is that way. So then God starts moving. But listen to this now, guys. You need to hear this because this may be your life. And if it's not now, it will be sometime, at times. Not all the time, but times. There's times when God's moving in your life that He expresses that through difficulties and silence. Listen, I'm not telling you something I think. I'm trying to help us. And there was 400 years of silence. That's longer than our country has existed. Silence from God to people He loves. Now you ladies in this room can't understand that. Y'all sit together in a circle, and if somebody's quiet for 30 seconds, y'all ask each other what you think. You get guys together in a circle, and you sit together for 5 minutes, don't say a word, and everybody's like thankful. Nobody's talking. The female mind doesn't work that way. I'm sorry, that didn't go with the Christmas story. 400 years. They have been tossed back and forth between government powers, have taken them over, another government takes them over. They get this little bitty peak of a revival with this dude that's just really tough. Gets a bunch of people behind him, and he has a revolt, and he takes over, and they get the temple back, and they get going. And man, all of a sudden you got the big revival, and Israel starting to think, man, we're going to do this. And then Rome comes in and wipes them out. And for another 100 and so years, it's just plain, they're dominated. And they haven't heard anything, right? Okay, now you ladies, and I'm serious now, I'm not picking on you, I'm serious. You ladies think about this. There's nothing happened in Israel in 400 years. And girls, even the young girls, y'all think about this, because you girls are about the age of where Mary was when this thing happened. A little bit older. She was a little bit older, not much. And all of a sudden, without anything, you got this old dude that's still serving in the priestly order, and he goes in to burn incense before the Holy of Holies on a regular day, just average day, 400 years. In those 400 years, there were 7 miracles that worked in the temple, and every one of them stopped, and nobody noticed. I mean, literally, it's like Samson. God's power had left him, and he didn't notice. And that's how the people's attitude was. That's how their mood was. Not because they were cold-hearted and mean, but because life had just beat that out of them, and they had let it. And so now the angel comes and speaks to Zechariah, and it's funny because Zechariah kind of reflects the nation's attitude and questions the angel. It's Gabriel. It's funny how Mary questions Gabriel and he loves her. Zechariah questions and he smacks him and says, okay, you won't talk until you have the baby now. You'll learn. So, but That's the first time God spoke to one man, no one else. There was no lightning. And Zechariah couldn't tell anybody, because God took his, Gabriel took his speaking away. So 6 months later, okay, and I'm gonna read this. Kids, listen to this, because this is the way, this is how our Christmas memory starts. And if you ladies that think about this, being at a point right before you're married, one of the most important times in your life, when you fix to marry your Iron Man, and you're fixing to have this great, marriage and life and all that, and you got married in a very ultra-religious place. I mean, this is worse than independent Southern Baptists. I mean, these people are just, and all of a sudden, I want to just read this. In the 6th month of Elizabeth's pregnancy, silence for 400 years, God sent the angel Gabriel. He's one of the top 3. There was Lucifer, Michael, and Gabriel. Okay, this dude here is not just, he's an angel, but he's okay. To Nazareth, a village, that would be like, if you have a boogie town anywhere close to you, it'd be like Porterdale, someplace where just one of the poorest, craziest places. As a realtor, Charles, what would be a place around here we could relate it to?
Porterdale fits.
Yeah, okay. So that's what Nazareth was. It was not the place where, we have village in Galilee, to a virgin named Mary. Okay, this was a young girl. Young, not old enough to be married, but young. Okay. She was engaged to be married to a man named Joseph, a descendant of King David. Gabriel appeared to her and said, "Greetings, favored woman, the Lord is with you." Okay? Now, after Mary went and changed her clothes and came back, that's me paraphrasing, I'm sorry. Confused and disturbed is how the Bible says it. Mary tried to think what the angel could mean. "Don't be afraid, Mary," the angel said to her, "for you have found favor with God." Okay? Here's what I want you to get. Put yourself, ladies, in that position, please. Seriously. God's moving, but nobody knows it. And he hadn't moved in 400 years. And everything that's happened to him has been negative, while God's building his positive kingdom. You have found favor with God. Then he says to her, "You will conceive and give birth to a son. You will name him Jesus. He will be very great and will be called the Son of the Most High. The Lord God will give him the throne of his ancestor David, and he will reign over Israel forever. His kingdom will never end." And Mary looks at Gabriel and says, "How can that be? I'm a virgin. I'm a young girl, and I've not been married yet." And he said, "God's Holy Spirit's going to do this." Now, I want you to get it. God is fixing to give the answer that he gave to Adam and Eve in the garden in chapter 3. He told Satan, Adam and Eve, at the point of sin, that a woman's seed is going to bruise, or you're going to crush your head, you're going to bruise his heel. A woman's seed is a virgin. You can ask your parents about that, and they'll explain it to you later. But this virgin's going to have a kid. Genesis 3:15. Mary is just a young girl that loves God, didn't get married, live in Boogie Town. And she doesn't have anything. She's not wealthy, don't have much to give. Their offering they gave was turtle doves, so they're poor. And Gabriel comes to her when they haven't spoke to Israel in 400 years. So the first thing I want you to think about is quit thinking you're not that important to God. And the second thing I want you to think about is when God moves, he don't ask permission.
Amen.
And he says, Gabriel says, "Mary, just let me tell you something. Forget your plans. You're gonna do this, you're gonna do this, you're gonna do this. And you're gonna name this baby that you're fixing to have Jesus, because it's God's baby. Okay, would one of you ladies stand up and explain to me how you would handle God's angel telling you you're fixing to have God's baby and you've got to raise him? Seriously. What would you do with that? How would you love to be Joseph and Mary and have lost Jesus in Jerusalem when he was a junior high kid? God, I lost him. I lost you. Okay, so that's the first part, right? So the Gabriel comes and tells him, right? So let's go back to Matthew. If you go to school, let's look at a few different things. Kids, here's where I need you to answer a question for me, okay? This is Matthew chapter 1, the birth of Jesus the Messiah. This is Joseph's perspective. Joseph is very religious, good man, well known, very respected, carpenter, so his money's not consistent. He gets it at times and goes without it. It's just a steady, busting himself trying to provide. He's getting married. This is how Jesus the Messiah was born. His mother Mary was engaged to be. This is Matthew chapter 1, verse 18. Was engaged to be married to Joseph, and before the marriage took place, while she was a virgin, she became pregnant. Okay, guys, think about this. Okay, I'm going to put it in perspective. Sharon and I met in college. We were dating. We decided to get married. She had all these other peckerwoods in school sniffing, circling around her. But I beat them out. And we decided we're going to get married. So this dude comes up, Angel comes up to me and says, hey, Sharon calls me and says, hey, I'm pregnant. So I'm just thinking, okay, she's pregnant. The Bible says Joseph was a good man, and so he decided to quietly put the marriage aside. Okay? So God sends an angel to Joseph. And it says, Joseph, your wife is going to carry God's baby, and you're going to name him Jesus. And this is what he says. Listen to this. Guys, first time this has ever been said this way. God's been working on this. This is 4,000 years of God working with people. And for the very first time, a dude that just found out his fiance is going to have a baby. And the angel says, oh, it's God's baby, and you'll name it. And he says, and she will have a son, and you will name him Jesus. For he will, listen to this, save his people from their sins. Okay, translate that as a couple. You're thinking about getting married, right? You got this girl, if you've been married for a while, think about when you met your wife and you started getting married. Think about your dating, think about your plans, think about all the sitting around drinking hot chocolate around the fire talking about, hey, what are we going to do when we get married? We're going to have some kids, I'm going to build a house, we're going to have this, and you're thinking of that. All of a sudden an angel comes alone. He didn't come to Joseph and Mary together, tells Mary, hey, you're going to be pregnant. Well, you know the story, and it comes to Joseph and tells him, God just stepped in their life and totally changed their life. He didn't ask, can I use you? He didn't ask, will you do what I'm asking? He came and said, this is what you will do. Boom, boom, boom. And he says to Joseph, it's so funny, Joseph, you don't get anything about Joseph other than the fact every time God spoke to him, immediately he obeyed him. He woke up in the middle of the night a few times and obeyed him. That's all you know about Joseph. And he's dead after a while. You never hear about him anymore. But here's Joseph. The angel says, oh, she's okay, marry her, because she's pregnant with God's baby. And it's God. Okay, God comes to you and says, hey, Barry, you're going to raise me. Nancy, you're going to have a baby, and your baby's going to be the Messiah, God in flesh. How do you spank Jesus how do you potty train God? I'm serious. I mean, this is Christmas time, guys. Think about it. What happens when you pin and, you know, back in the old days when we had the pin diapers, you ever stick the baby with the pin by accident? It's funny. To me, it's funny. I thought it was funny, but the baby would cry and Sarah would get off upset. But I mean, I changed so many diapers, I just can tell you. So I'm just asking you, think about it. Okay, kids? God's going to take away their sin, going to take away the sins of the world. What would you think? What, I'm just asking you. This is Christmas. We see a tree, presents, family, food, all the memories, and every memory we have is precious, right? Ask Joseph and Mary about their memories. Dude, our world was rocked. The next thing you know, we can't even have kids. And Joseph can't even have a honeymoon because his wife's pregnant and he can't mess with her until after she has a baby. So they have to stay away, separate from each other as man and wife while they're having a baby. I mean, there's just a lot of things that happen and going on that we don't think about when we think about Christmas. And Israel's still droning. They're still wondering, where's God? And the answer is in that little girl's belly that's fixing to get married. And so that's the beginning, right? That's how it starts. And so we look at this. Here's what's pretty neat. Think about it. Okay, if I were to ask, I'm going to do this different. I want to do this. Okay, I need $200. And I need somebody to hand me two $100 bills. There's a few of you in here that could not give that to me this morning because it's not in your wallet right now. Right? Right? Okay. That's Joseph and Mary. And they're getting married. He's going to marry. So he married. In their culture, when you get engaged, you wait 12 months and then marry so that everybody in your neighborhood knows that you haven't been doing what you're not supposed to be doing till after you're supposed to do it. Your parents will explain that to you too. So for that 12-month period, there's just proving that she's a virgin. Well, in the 5th month, 6th month, Joseph marries her. And she starts swelling. In a religious group. You're favored by God. God has favored you, but He doesn't explain to your religious, judgmental friends what He's doing. Sometimes God's hand on you weighs heavy, my friend, and sometimes God's use is not, in your mind, going to be translated as positive, while God's fixed to save the entire world from the most important thing they've ever had. That's their sin, damning them to hell. And these people that are going to be damned to hell are judging you for being a bastard kid. Having a bastard kid. When God's supernaturally doing something. And there's no explanations. No prophets. And so all of a sudden you got these three Eastern dudes. Now, are they Chinese? Are they Indian? Are they Persian? Everybody argues about where they're from. They're magi. They're royal. They're like they'd be like kings. I mean, they're the same as kings. They're extremely wealthy, powerful movers of the world, and they are like Daniel and all those guys. They study the stars, and they study all the ancient writings of their day, so they know all the stuff that you've learned. The books they learned in their day, they knew them, and they were philosophers, and they were all the above. And they studied the sky. They come walking into Jerusalem while Jerusalem's still droning, okay? Guys, think about this. And they come to Herod and say, hey, where's the Messiah? Where's God in flesh? Where's the King? Where's the Savior to the world? And Herod says, what are you talking about? He's born. We've seen his star. We're following. We're coming. They wanted to worship. All they wanted to do was bow their head. All they wanted to do was get on their knees and bow to him. and worship him. Let me travel 6 months on a camel so I can bow my knee to this new king, the king, God king. They got it. They weren't Jewish. And shook the whole place. Herod got all pissed and was ready to kill everybody. Did kill a bunch of women. All this stuff, and then everything's going crazy. These guys are not stupid. They understand Biden when they see him. So they decide they're going to go home a different way instead of telling him what he wants to know politically. But they get out of the place wondering where the king was. The religious leaders knew where Jesus was supposed to be born, but was groaning in such a way in their faith that they were not ready to see him when he came. So these Eastern guys come in asking, boom, hey. And they say, well, he's in Bethlehem. Oh, so they start heading to Bethlehem. The Bible says a star guides them. It says, after this interview, this is Matthew chapter 2, verse 3. After this interview, the wise men went their way, and the star that they had seen, the star guided them to the very house and pointed. Have you ever seen a star that high, that specific? But somehow that star showed them the house. So they get to this poor carpenter's house, open the door, and this woman's got this child, and they go in and pray and give them gifts. We say 3 wise men because there was 3 gifts given. We don't know how many there were, but they were kings, and they were royal, and they wanted to worship God. They saw what Israel missed. And that tells me not to miss what God may be doing because of problems. Don't miss because what God may be doing because of uncomfortable circumstances I'm enduring for a long time. Don't go through silence in your prayer time and think God has abandoned you. He cannot. Are y'all hearing the words coming out of my mouth? So here's the Christmas story. So these dudes, Chinese dudes probably, Yin, Yang, and Lin come running in, and they sit down and they worship Jesus and give him gold, frankincense, and leave. Provide enough for them to run. Give them everything they need. Leave, right? Why is nobody getting it? Question, kids. Why is nobody getting what's going on? Why did they not see it? Anybody, is that a question a kid can understand and answer? Why is it nobody understands what God's doing when he sends the angel and tells Joseph and Mary? You got an answer? Okay, Justin? What do you think? Just say it. If it's stupid, I'll tell you. I'm just kidding. There's no such thing.
He just wanted you to know who's listening.
What did he say?
He wanted you to know who was listening.
Okay. Here's the thing. I don't think we recognize when God's working sometimes, because a lot of times we're trying to get God to work for us instead of us work for him. And we're too busy trying to get him to do what we want him to do rather than understand what he is doing. And everything God was doing was not to benefit Joseph and Mary. It wasn't even to benefit Israel. It was sworn to. But it was to save mankind. And so all of a sudden now, they go and worship leave. Now, we're going to go to the other thing. We're about through, kids. It's going to be over. I kept you in here for this part. So the Roman Augustus said, okay, well, I'm going to do the biggest tax that's ever been done. Every man's going to have to pay Rome this tax. But you're going to have to travel to your hometown to pay it. It's a census. I'm going to count you, and then I'm going to tax you. Okay, so you take a person struggling, trying to pay your bills, and all of a sudden now, you've got to pay this huge tax to the government. But you can't just pay it. Okay, the way this translates is, you get this announcement from the government that says Josh, you and Annette have to travel from here to Commerce, Georgia. That's the distance from where Galilee was to Bethlehem, 90 miles. So if you've ever been to Chick-fil-A on Commerce, Georgia, right there by 85 going up towards South Carolina, that's almost 90 miles from here. So you got a wife that's carrying a pumpkin, and she's due any day. We're gonna walk 90 miles, and she's gonna ride on a donkey. You're gonna walk 90 miles, so there's 2.5 days. You can't do a road march because you got a pregnant woman with a donkey. So you walk into Commerce, Georgia to pay taxes with money you don't have for a government that's oppressive, and you're God's people with God's hand on you. That's Christmas Eve, guys. And God hadn't spoken to me in 400 years. Why is Rome doing this? Why is he charging me money? God, where are you? Mary's asking that. She's carrying him. And they go, that's funny. Okay, here's the question, guys. Kids, listen. Here's the question. They go 90 miles, get to Bethlehem. She's fixing the bus. And the hotel won't let her in. It could be several reasons. Could be they are full because they're really packed. Could be because she's pregnant and he's not officially the husband. They're religious. Could be a lot of stuff. Could be judgmental. Could be all that. Who knows? God doesn't tell us. But they get there, there's no room for them, and the dude or somebody at the end says you can stay in the stable, or they just go into the stable. And think about this, guys. Think about this. You got your wife sitting beside you that you love with all your heart, right? Somebody answer me.
Right.
Okay? Yes. Did you hear me, Gracie? I didn't hear you say yes. I'm sorry. Did you say yes? Oh, thank you, Gracie. So now, God comes to Joseph. I'm going to use that because he's distant. He gets mad at him. Come back to the house of me because he's gone. Okay, so you got Joseph here. You got Mary. And they're going to have Jesus. And God says, Mary, you're very favored. You're favored by God. Joseph, this baby is mine, and he's going to save the world from their sins. I mean, that's a praise service, right? So how does this play out? You walk 90 days on a donkey 2 days before you have your baby? You think your car seat's uncomfortable? And then you get to Bethlehem, and guess what? You got God's baby, and you're favored by God, and you're going to save the world, and the stinking hotel won't give you a room. Merry Christmas. How's your Christmas memory, Mary? I can't say it in public. Wouldn't you be frustrated? Hey, Mary, guess what? I got a place for us. Where? We're staying in the donkey, and we're staying in the barn, and I found some hay that's not green. Anybody that's had a barn understands what I just said. You got some clean hay, and you make a little spot, and you lay her down and say, this is where we're going to stay. And nobody in this town cares. Nobody in that hotel has come out and said, oh, your wife's pregnant, you come take my room, I'll sleep in here. Most of you men in here would have done that. And they ran up the barn, all of a sudden, think with me, guys, just think with me, okay? Why, hey, Caleb, Justin, Lily, why was there no room in the hotel room for them? Why do you think that was, why did God let that happen? What's your opinion? Anybody can answer that. I'll let anybody try. What do you think, Justin?
It was packed.
It was packed.
It was packed. That's probably true. Part of it. Anybody else? Lily, you got a reason? I don't blame you for taking the answer. Anybody? Why was there no room for Jesus?
Because it wasn't part of God's plan.
Say it louder.
Because it wasn't part of God's plan for them to stay in a hotel.
It's exactly what God's plan. And that's what my question is. What you're saying is, why was it not God's plan for there to be no room for it?
The lamb's born to see.
Lamb's supposed to be born in a barn, right? Think about it. You're a Christmas kid. This is Christmas. The lamb's supposed to be a great answer, but the lamb's supposed to be born in a barn. It was God's plan. It was packed. It was all the above. But the children of Israel were treating God the way God was treating Joseph and Mary. It was a mirror. It was a mirror of the attitude of God's people, not the heathen. They had gotten so harshly treated by the circumstances that their God would let them live in. How dare him use us? Now, they would never say that, but their heart was tired. They were drawn in. And God brings himself to be incarnate in a human body so he can accept our sin and be killed on the cross. But he has to come as a baby. So it comes as a baby to people who are too busy and too crowded and too infested with himself to give him place. And he did it blessing Joseph and Mary. 400 years. All of a sudden, guys, another question. God hadn't spoken to anybody in 400 years, but now you got a whole, the heaven, armies of heaven show up to a bunch of shepherds out in the middle of a field, in the middle of the night. Say, hey dude, the one that was promised is born already today. Was born tonight. I'll give you a sign. He's laying in a barn, in a manger, food trough, where they feed the goats and cows and sheep. Why was Jesus laid in a manger, food trough? Okay, Justin?
Because he's supposed to be the lamb.
Exactly. Caleb, what was you going to say?
And there was no lodging available.
I couldn't hear because your teeth are missing. What'd you say?
Because there's no lodging available.
Exactly. Lily, what do you think? What'd she say?
I agree.
Oh, good answer. She is so like her mother. But here's what I'm saying. Okay, we're celebrating Christmas, right? We're celebrating gifts. And we're enjoying family. And all that stuff is good, guys. God wants us to do this. There's nothing we should be ashamed of, right, Danny? I mean, hey, don't you love the person and people you're sitting by right now? Well, don't answer that if you don't. Okay? But think about it, okay, right? But so often we enjoy the privileges of God without understanding what people went to get us here. Joseph and Mary didn't have a positive Christmas. It wasn't a nice little warm night with the shining and people coming, and when the kids do the play, it is all that. But Joseph was, how am I going to pay the bills? How am I going to pay for this? I've got God's son to please and to feed, and my wife. And God was never ordained. I mean, Joseph, there was no place where we heard Joseph being ordained, and now he's, you start thinking about the priesthood of Joseph. He dealt with God. He handled God with man. It's reversed from what most priests do, but still. And then all of a sudden, he can't afford to pay attention. He's broker of Job's turkey. And all of a sudden, you got this dude knocking on the door. You open the door, and you got a king sitting there. He says, "Can I pray and worship your baby?" Well, yeah, but they wouldn't even let us stay in the hotel room. We had to have them in the barn. But yeah, you can pray it up. So these guys would not be caught dead in the house Joseph and Mary's in. They walk in and they leave in Mar-a-Lago and coming into whatever, and they walk in and then they get on their knees and worship Jesus as a baby in Mary's arms. Because them three outsiders get it. And then they say, by the way, we're leaving, but we've got to give him something. Gold, frankincense, and myrrh. They use a whole different message. But they basically furnished the next few years of their family's life. But they didn't give Joseph and Mary anything. They gave God their heart. And so my challenge to us, guys, just listen, kids, I'm through. My challenge to us is this. This Christmas, when we do our gifts and do all the stuff we're going to do, those of us in here, and I believe everybody in here is a believer. I believe you know you're going to heaven, right? This Christmas, let's bring that into it. Let's don't just give gifts to each other. Let's don't just love each other. Let's don't just spend our time. Let's do all that and do it with all you can do. I mean, knock yourself out with it. But at the end of the day, take a moment by yourself and get like those three guys. And make sure you give God and Jesus Christ some of your heart the same way Joseph and Mary had to give God's hearts to people, and they didn't even understand it. God made them display God's heart. I want you to be favored by me. Ride 90 miles on a donkey. You're going to be favored by me. Get in town with no place to stay. You're going to be favored by me. Hey, you're a great couple. Remember the aspirations you had when you got married? Oh, we're going to do this. Yeah, hey, Joseph, way to provide for your family. Sleep in the barn, having a baby, putting a food trough. You're successful. Probably the most successful person that's ever lived. But he had to mirror God's heart for the people. And he also mirrored the people's heart for God. He was the intercessor between the two, Joseph and Mary was, and the product of it was God in flesh. And if you catch that, maybe we can see our life a little different. Because our life's a whole lot more important than surface, if you know Jesus. Questions or comments? I think the kids and Megan and them are going to sing something for us to close by. But I want to just take a minute and let's act like we're the Magi, the Chinese dudes that came in to pray to Jesus. Let's just thank you. And then we'll let the thing do that. We'll have our Christmas time. Lord, thank you. Okay, Mike?
Go up there, Val, and sing with him.
All right, we're going to close out with We Wish You a Merry Christmas. We've got a couple of choir. You guys want to stand up? We'll all,
We wish you a Merry Christmas. We wish you a Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year.
Good tidings we bring to you and your King. Good tidings, Christmas and a Happy New Year.
Now we're going to bring yummy cookies because they don't like figgy pudding. So bring us some yummy cookies.
So bring us some yummy cookies. So bring us some yummy cookies.
And bring some out here. Good tidings we bring to you and your King. We wish you a Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year. We won't go until we get Valor is the youngest, he's the main. Caleb's the last.